They called me lucky before I could thank the caterer. My name is Ada Whitmore, and today is my retirement party. The conference hall off River Street smells like cut roses and lemon polish, the kind of scent chosen by people who believe a room can be smoothed with flowers and light. I stand near the sheet cake with my name in frost blue letters, listening as a vice president I trained calls my career a fortunate breeze. Lucky, he says, into the microphone, as if my 4 decades were a coin that landed heads every single time. Luck follows her, he adds, and laughter warms the ceiling. Ada was always in the right room. I smile for the photographs. I wait for the toast to end. The cake knife is cold in my hand, and for a second I imagine pressing the metal flat against my wrist, just to ground myself. My son, Luke, leans in with a sideways hug, and his wife, Ellie, whispers that I look radiant. They're good to me. They do not know the boxes under my bed, or the letters I kept in a manila folder labeled rainy days. The first slice of cake falls onto a paper plate, yellow sponge and white buttercream, clean lines like a blueprint. I perfected clean lines long before our newer architects learned to place a signature block. Whitmore and Lake began as an unpaid internship and a bus pass. The firm adopted me when I was 22 and organized, a silent runner who made rooms work. I color-coded cabinets when blueprints were still on vellum. I typed specifications while the partners smoked and tapped ash onto saucers. I was lucky, they said, to be hired during a slow season. Lucky to be given the flood control proposal because no one else wanted overtime. Lucky when it passed, when the city applauded. Lucky, always lucky. On the stage, the current CEO reads from a sheet. He tells a brief story about a proposal we rescued in 1998, the river plan that kept the West neighborhoods dry. He attributes it to a partner with a clever idea and says my steady hand was the glue. The partner in question stands 2 feet from the punch bowl, nodding, more silver than I remember. I picture the photograph I kept from that winter, the city wall lit pale, the water kept where it belonged. I remember the drafty office at midnight, me tracing flows and overflow basins while everyone else slept. I remember a handwritten note from the founder, Oliver Lake, tucked into my paycheck, a single sentence in neat block print. You saved them quietly. Thank you. I never framed that note because people like me learn what survives in the dark. Say a few words, Ada. The CEO calls, and there is a polite murmur. I step up. My dress is navy. My voice carries in rooms like this because it has learned to be precise. Thank you, I say. Thank you for celebrating a long road. I hold the microphone with 2 fingers, as if it might slip. Luck is a generous story. Tonight, I will tell you another. There is a pause that feels like weather changing. On a side table, a cardboard banker's box sits under a drape. The box travels with me the way a wallet does. Inside are carbon copies, memos, stamped timelines, and the kind of proof you gather when your name is always spelled right but remembered wrong. Someone laughs softly, unsure. Someone else checks their watch. After the cake, I say, offering a smile, I'll share a few pages. The first spark of tension arrives like a draft under a door. It is small, but it is steady. Lucky is a word with pretty wings. It cannot lift a ledger. The party moves, as parties do, toward toasts and careful stories. People cling to the edges of their chairs, sipping sparkling water and pretending the punch is stronger than it is. I circulate like a host in a home that is no longer mine. Colleagues clasp my hands and press compliments into my palms, light coins that will buy nothing once the room empties. 4 decades, says Claire from accounting. You made it look easy. I made it look finished. I answer, and she laughs, not hearing. I have been called steady more times than I have been called by my first name. I learned steadiness at a Formica kitchen table, watching my father count cash tips from his second shift, his thumb dampening each bill. He believed in proof, not in praise. He kept a pencil stub and a pocket ledger. When the factory cut his hours, he showed the numbers without apology, and somehow the manager returned 2 shifts the next month.
Paper talks, he said.
Paper holds. At the firm, paper held me upright. Paper recorded what voices forgot. I kept notes in the margins and filed copies of drafts into folders labeled by street. I wrote the rationale for each river gate and culvert. I noted calls, edits, and rain events that matched our projections to within a tenth of an inch. Partners came and went. Their signatures fattened the title blocks. I remained. There were lunches I was not invited to, where new contracts were promised over steaks and red wine. There were late-night dominoes where friendships hardened into alliances. At those tables, I was a cheerful ghost. "You wouldn't like it," one of them said once, with a shrug. "It's loud." I cleaned the plan room while the sound of their laughter seeped under the door. When my husband left, he called me married to my work, like it was an affair that had stolen me. "You're obsessed with proving things," he said, packing a duffel. "No one else needs all that detail." I signed the papers, paid the lawyer, and returned to the office at dawn. There was a pump station failing near the East Canal. No one will remember the January I caught a misspecified gasket before it stranded a neighborhood. They will remember the partner who smiled at the ribbon cutting. "Lucky you saw it," he told me then, shaking my hand for a photographer who did not bother to adjust the frame. Tonight, a younger project manager tells my son that I was blessed, that I always stood next to the right person at the right time. Luke is polite, he nods. He had seen me asleep at the kitchen table, cheek against a stack of submittals, a pen still in my fingers. He delivered grilled cheese sandwiches to my desk in middle school when the town was under flood alert, and I could not risk leaving. "Right place, right time," he used to say, grinning, and then he would set my coffee within reach. On stage, the slideshow begins. Scanned photographs of plans, ribbon cuttings, aerial views of dry neighborhoods after the big storms. The captions say the partner names. The captions say the firm. My name is tucked into the final slide, a cursive thank you dotted with stars. I breathe. The draped box on the side table waits like a dog trained to heel. Proof has a weight that settles your shoulders and clarifies your stance. I listen to the chatter. The opinion that my life was what wind leaves on the ground. The old word returns and picks at me. Lucky. I do not argue with people's stories anymore. I have learned something stronger than argument, something slower, quieter, and impossible to derail. When the last toast fades, I will place my folder on the lectern with both hands. I will tell the true story of a wall that held, and I will begin with the number of rain events that matched our models over 27 years. "Are you nervous?" Ellie asks, touching my elbow. "I am ready," I say. The vow rises inside me and settles, a steady flame. I will not shame. I will show. I will let paper talk, and I will stand still while it does. The discovery began, as many beginnings do, with a kindness I did not expect. I was 30 and exhausted, and the plan room had eaten my weekend again. Mrs. Patel, the record clerk with quiet eyes and a steel spine, came in on her day off. She found me sorting plans from a municipal archive donation. Her hand landed on a rolled blueprint, the way someone smooths a child's hair. "You file like a cartographer," she said.
"Come."
Tea. We went to the break room with its humming refrigerator and lonely calendar. She poured strong tea into paper cups and opened a tin of butter cookies. "You have to keep your own copy," she said simply, not as a complaint, but as a map drawn on a napkin. "The firm has a memory like a sieve. If you want the river to remember you when you are old, keep the edges of the maps." It was the kind of advice an older woman gives when she understands the river already knows your name and might forget it anyway. From then I kept edges. When a partner initialed my floodgate calculations, then presented them as his inspired compromise, I kept the version that carried my handwriting and his initials, with the date stamped. When the founder wrote me that crisp note, "You saved them quietly. Thank you." I kept the envelope, its postmark clear. When the city inspector emailed to say our emergency fix prevented a dangerous backflow, I printed his words and clipped them to the maintenance report. Not to hoard, not to accuse, but to anchor. Mrs. Patel retired first. On her last day, she handed me a stack of Tyvek envelopes. "Stormproof," she said, "for the papers that cannot get wet." We kept in touch after she moved 2 streets over. Sometimes I shoveled her walk before work. Sometimes she sent samosas by Luke when he raced his bike around our block. When cloudbursts hammered the city, we called one another without speaking, listening to the drum on separate roofs. 2 winters ago, she was the one who said, "It is almost time, Ada. When you leave, do not let them write you as Breeze." Her eyes had rheumatism shine. "Let the river keep your name." She sent me the name of a young municipal attorney, Lori Chen, who believed in interdepartmental memory, like it was a civic duty. Lori met me at my kitchen table on a Saturday, the light cold and clean. She brought a scanner and patience. We made piles, proposals with markups, internal memos to partners, city correspondences, documentation of my role during flood emergencies, budget approvals I authored, maintenance schedules I built, and letters of commendation addressed to the firm that specifically named my supervision. The piles grew like careful levees. "Truth is slow," Lori said, sliding a plastic sleeve over the founder's note. "But it does not drown." I showed her the payroll records I had kept from the early years, proof of unpaid overtime followed by comp days that never arrived. I showed her the scholarship paperwork I created in 2009 when we routed the city's bonus into a rotating fund for interns who could not afford bus passes. No one had asked me to do that. The board approved it because it was typed, tidy, and cost them nothing publicly. 4 interns became architects because of that envelope. Mrs. Patel sat with us sometimes, her slippers whispering against my kitchen floor. "Do not make a scene," she said softly. "Make a record." We added the emails from the inspector who had retired, the one who wrote, "He trusted my judgment when the river rose." We added the draft of a 2011 award application where my name had been replaced in the final version. We added the maintenance log that caught the failed gasket before it failed, a small circle and a notation in my hand. We added photographs of me in a hard hat under gray skies, taken by a city photographer who did not know he was contradicting history. Lori made a binder for tonight. "You are not suing," she said. "You are showing. You are setting the record in the city archive, and you are telling a room full of people which pages matter." She printed a cover page with a single title, "Not Luck, the work of Ada Whitmore." "Will they be angry?" I asked. "They will be surprised," she said, closing the rings with a gentle click. "Surprise is what you owe them. Anger is yours if you want it. You do not." I did not. I wanted only still water inside their chests for half a minute while they understood. The box under the table took the binder, like a chest holds breath. Paper has a weight you can predict. It prepares your arms, steadies your step, and gives your voice something to lean against. Mrs. Patel kissed my cheek before she left. "Quietly," she said, "as you always have." The cake is cut to a coastline. The roses lean in their vases. Glassware rings when set too hard on the folding tables. I touched the draped box with the tips of my fingers, then lifted onto the stage. The microphone sighs as if it, too, is tired. "Thank you for the speeches," I say. "May I offer one of my own?" The room gives a polite hum. People expect gratitude and a final joke. I am grateful. I do not joke. I have been called lucky. I begin. Today, and for many years. I look at the faces that built and build and shook my hand at holiday parties. I prefer accurate, a chuckle, short as a hiccup. I open the box and lift out the binder. The plastic shines under the lights. Its spine has my name. "This is a record," I say. It is a record of work. It is a record of storms and calculations and phone calls. It is also a record of who did what and when and why it mattered. I keep my voice even. I hold the book the way I used to hold a survey level, centered, calm. I set it on the lectern and flip to the first page. There is a copy of the founder's note, small and quiet. I read it aloud without embellishment. "You saved them quietly. Thank you." Someone coughs. Someone stops. In the 4th row, the partner credited in the earlier anecdote shifts on his heels. I move to the maintenance log from the winter of the gasket. The notation is neat. The date is clear. "This prevented a failure," I say. "The cost would have been measured in basements and sickness." You can see the inspector's confirmation here. I do not add adjectives. I do not lift my chin. I let the inspector, now gone hunting and gardening somewhere wide and green, speak through his old municipal email. I turn to the flood control proposal from 1998 and the revision history with initials. My handwriting appears in the margins. The partner's initials are later and approving. I slide the page into the camera feed connected to the projector because I planned for this, and the screen throws the edges of my life across the wall. This calculation was mine, I say. The overflow basin location was mine. The partner approved. The city accepted. The west neighborhood stayed dry. No one claps. No one argues. A city engineer in the back, now gray and rounder, raises his hand halfway, then lets it fall. I show the scholarship fund, the memo that created it, the interns who rode the bus, and then, years later, stamped drawings. I show the early payroll stubs that recorded hours no one remembered because they were done by someone quiet. I show the award application draft with my name in one version and gone in the next. It happens, I say gently, because absolution is part of this, unless you hold the edges. Lori stands near the side door with a small thumb drive, and when I nod, she brings it forward. A digital copy for the city archive, she says, voice steady. Ms. Whitmore asked me to file it this evening. The CEO blinks, then nods, then realizes the cameras at the back belong to the local paper's weekend freelancer. He composes his face. The partner at the punch bowl studies his cup like it might give instruction. I turn the binder's last page. The founder's note waits again. I place it beside a photograph of the wall. Winter of 1998. Cold light across concrete. The city spared the stink of rot. I list slowly the years the river rose and we held it. I say the numbers only once. Luck is a beautiful word, I say, closing the binder. It belongs to weddings and parking spaces. It does not belong to levees. Silence takes the room in both hands. It is not hostile. It is not reverent. It is a quiet that understands weight. Claire from accounting is the first to speak. We should have done this ourselves, she says softly. We should have kept it right. The partner who gathered compliments like cufflinks clears his throat. Ada, he says, thank you, I say, not looking at him, because this is not a duel. This is a ledger opened and read into the light. You approved good work. The city slept easier. The CEO steps forward. On behalf of the firm, he begins, but I raise a hand. On behalf of the river, I correct, still calm. This goes to the city archive. It belongs to the people who sandbagged and walked their dogs on dry sidewalks. A woman near the aisle wipes her eyes. She interned in 2009. She used the bus pass. She mouths, thank you. I close the box. I lower the microphone. Stillness arrives, not as punishment, but as a tide that has finally chosen its line. Justice is sometimes a door that shuts without echo. It is the weight of a binder placed in the right hands. It is a room that cannot return to a story it outgrew 5 minutes ago. The next morning, the house is a bowl of quiet. Light lifts itself onto my kitchen table, thin and clean. The vase holds 2 tired roses from last night, and their scent is gentler now, more late afternoon than early pomp. I make oatmeal and slice a pear the way my mother taught me, small arcs that look like careful topography. Luke calls on his way to work. Mom, he says, that was something. He does not crowd me with questions. He is his own man, a teacher who knows the power of evidence in a distracted room. How are you feeling? Like a tide exactly where it should be, I say. He laughs softly. Ellie says we should frame the note. Not the note, I answer. The maintenance log. We both smile into the line. At 9, I carry the binder's twin, the personal copy, into the small room facing the maple in my yard. I set it on a shelf with the bus schedules I saved from Luke's boyhood, the report cards he believed would break him, and the photographs of the first house we thought we couldn't afford. The maple out front drops one leaf, then another. The floor takes their faint shapes in gold. I walk through the rooms and put things away. The navy dress goes into its bag. The shoes return to their box with tissue paper shushing. The quiet returns me to my hands. My hands know so much. They know how to measure flour by feel and set a bubble level by breath. They know how to lift a binder without hardening the wrists. They know when work is done. There are emails in my inbox from the city archivist and from Lori. The archivist has already logged the file with a civic record number and a description that makes me blink. Work of primary importance in the evolution of local flood control. Lori writes that the paper ran a tidy piece, not a splash, and that the comments are people remembering dry basements, safe late-night walks, and the hiss of sprinklers a week after big storms. They are not naming partners, she writes. They are naming the wall. Mrs. Patel sends a single-line message. Still water, she writes. I reply with the photograph of the maple. At noon, I walk to the river. The wind is cool, and the sky is the soft gray that keeps secrets. The wall is as it has always been, workmanlike and correct, not pretty, not grand. A boy in a red hoodie bikes its length and lifts one hand in a wave when he passes me. I lift mine back. My reflection in the water is steady. A gull is a white stitch against the far bank. A woman pauses near me and touches the concrete like she is greeting a relative. It kept my mother's quilt safe, she says, not recognizing me, and I do not tell her. After the flood in '99, she hung them just to smell them, dry as sunlight. That is a good smell, I say. At home, I open a box of saved letters I have not read in years. There are birthday cards and a note from my father with his neat pencil numbers. There is one from Luke, age 9, promising to put his dishes in the sink during flood week, so I would sleep 15 minutes more. I tuck that inside the binder's cover where it belongs. Work is not separate from the hands that made it. It is not separate from the circle of people who set sandwiches by your elbow at midnight. Quiet revenge is never about humiliation. It is about giving peace new names and hiring it to stay. I start a new notebook. On the first page, I write 3 goals. Learn to bake sourdough that does not pretend to be cake. Help the neighborhood council apply for the grant to restore the creek by the school. Visit Mrs. Patel every Thursday with soup or ginger tea. Ellie texts a photograph of the intern's bus pass envelope framed in the firm's lobby. The caption says, "In honor of continued access." I stare at it for a long minute, then exhale. Maybe nothing changes quickly. Maybe it changes one plaque at a time. In the afternoon, the sun folds itself into the room, kind and low. I knead the dough lightly and leave it to rise under a clean towel. I clean the counter in steady circles, the way I cleaned plan tables after long nights. The kitchen clock ticks in an accurate voice. Every so often, the street lifts a sound, bicycle chain, child shout, a dog shaking its tags, and then it subsides again. I think of the word lucky and let it drift to the surface of my mind. I think of what we call luck when we do not want to meet labor's steady eyes. I think of paper that holds, of numbers that do not apologize, of a wall that remembers even when people forget. When the bread is in the oven and the room warms with a smell older than my work, I sit and write a letter to the city. Please consider adding footpath lighting along the southern stretch of the wall for winter evenings. I include a suggested fixture and cost estimate. I attach a photograph of the boy in the red hoodie, taken from behind, safe and unidentifiable, a hint of why the light matters. I sign my name in my plain hand, the one I used on logbooks and permission slips. My name is enough. It always was enough, whether anyone said it aloud or not. The timer dings. I pull the loaf free and set it on the rack. Steam lifts like a prayer that does not insist on anything. The crust crackles as it cools, small sounds of completion. I slice an end and butter it with a practice swipe, then carry the plate to the table by the window. Outside, the maple holds still, and the world is set at a good level. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.